Gunsalus Rotatori was a 32-year-old woman living with her husband in Anita, Michigan. Lee was the oldest of 4 siblings and grew up on the outskirts of Rochester, Minnesota. Her siblings described her as a happy, outgoing woman, artistic with many friends. Growing up, she loves drawing horses, and she fulfilled her dream of owning one while living in Michigan. Lee attended the University of Wisconsin, getting her bachelor's degree in dietary services and a master's degree in food nutrition. Lee married her first husband while she was an undergraduate and had a child with him in 1970. The couple got divorced in Rockford, Illinois in 1977. In 1978, Lee would marry Gerald, also known as Jerry Nimke. They would get a divorce in 1979, but would remarry in 1981. Jay had a history of crime. Years prior, when he was only 17 years old, he was arrested and convicted for beating a local waitress to death in 1960 in Chicago. He was tried and sentenced to death for the murder. However, the Supreme Court overturned his conviction less than 2 years later, as the preliminary hearing in the case was not conducted properly. Jerry eventually was sentenced to 75 years in prison. In the second trial, however, due to prosecutorial bureaucracy, he was ultimately released in 1978. And upon his early release, he would meet his future wife, Lee Rotatori. In mid-June of 1982, Lee got a job offer as a food service director at Jenny Edmondson Hospital. While she was currently working in Utica, Michigan, she accepted the offer and moved to Council Bluffs, Iowa. Her husband, Jerry, was working as a part-time delivery man for a flower shop in Grand Haven, Michigan. He was supposed to move to Council Bluffs, Iowa once Lee got settled in. Lee arrived to Council Bluffs in mid-June and started her orientation for her new job. On June 21st, she was new to the area and did not have permanent housing. Staying at the Best Western Frontier Motor Lodge, now known as the Best Western Crossroads of the Bluffs, she was located just off of the I-20, 9 and I-80 interchange. On June 24th, Lee went boating on Lake Manawa with her new colleagues. Evening came, and she stopped at McDonald's to pick up dinner before heading back to her motel. This would be the last time that she was ever seen alive the next day. Lee failed to attend her first post-orientation day of work later that day. Her boss called the motel staff to check on Lee. An motel employee went to her room to talk to her and instead found a gruesome sight. Lee was found lying face up on the bed, wearing blood-soaked pajamas. The motel staff immediately notified police. The medical examiner would report that Lee had died from a single stab wound to the heart. She was also sexually assaulted. The investigators did not find any sign of a forced injury. The food that she had purchased from McDonald's was only enough for one person, so investigators surmised that she was not expecting any guests. The medical examiner stated that she likely died 12 hours before her body had been found. Robbery may have been a motive, as the victim's wallet, watch, and ring were missing, but the police were unsure. Investigators interviewed her family and friends. Given her husband's prior history, Jerry was suspected, but he was cleared after it was found that he had a rock-solid alibi. Due to the proximity of the motel to the highway's interchange, the police had a hard time narrowing down suspects, as the killer could have been anybody. Sergeant Larry Williams, the investigating officer, said that by the time her body was found, quote, "The killer could have been 5 feet away or 1,000 miles away." The Jenny Edmondson Hospital, along with other local organizations, raised a $3,000 reward for anybody who could provide info in the case, but no one came forward. There would be no leads or suspects in the case, and it would eventually go cold. In 2001, the evidence from the crime scene was submitted to the State of Iowa Division of Criminal Investigations Lab In order to be examined, they found the presence of a male DNA profile. The DNA profile was entered into federal databases, but no match could be found in 2019. Investigators sent a DNA sample to Parabon Nano Labs. Parabon, using snapshot DNA phenotyping, was able to determine that the killer was most likely a white male of Northern European descent. They then entered the DNA profile into genealogy websites such as 23andMe and Ancestry.com. They were then able to find a match to a relative. That was the 6th to 8th cousin of the suspect. Still, the chances of them finding out the suspect were slim to none then. In March of 2020, investigators were contacted by Eric Schuber, a volunteer genealogist and college student, who offered to help. Eric had already assisted police in several other cases in multiple states and most recently had helped solve the murder of Morris Anke Varela. With Eric's assistance, investigators were able to narrow down the list to 2 brothers. One of the brothers was too young at the time of Lee's murder, which meant the other brother, Thomas O. Freeman, was likely the killer. Investigators contacted Freeman's daughter, who provided a DNA sample. In 2022, the investigators confirmed that Thomas O. Freeman was the killer. Thomas Freeman was a 35-year-old trucker at the time of Lee's murder. Police believe that Freeman had killed Lee while passing through the area. It was also found that Freeman was a victim of a murder himself just 2 months after Lee's murder. On October 30th, 1982, Freeman's decomposing body was found in a shallow grave not far from his home in Compton, Illinois. He had been shot 4 times in the chest. The coroner determined that he was killed 2 to 3 months prior to his body being found. His case remains unsolved. While the investigating officer could not find a direct connection between Freeman and Lee, he later commented, quote, "2 months later, he dies a violent death. I'm not a real big believer in coincidences." The Council Bluffs Police Department are working with the Illinois State Police to see whether Freeman's murder is connected to Lee's murder. They're investigating if Lee's husband, Jerry, had anything to do with Freeman's murder. It was found that after Jerry got out of prison in 1978, he attended a college in Carbondale, Illinois, which was only 15 miles from where Freeman's body was later found. It is unclear if Jerry had anything to do with Freeman's murder, but he is considered a person of interest. Jerry, however, died in 2019. Leah Rotori's case was finally solved after 40 years. Jean Kane was a 26-year-old mother of 3, living in Birdsboro, Brooks County, Pennsylvania. Anna grew up in a troubled home and was subject to both physical and sexual abuse, resulting in a subsequent drug addiction. By 1988, Anna was mother to 3 children and was working as a sex worker to provide for her family. The path she chose was a dangerous one, as prostitutes were at high risk back then, and still today, and Anna was subjected to meet all types of dangerous men. She also had a history of arrests for prostitution and petty theft. Anna had just moved from Writing to Birdsboro, Pennsylvania on October 22, 1988. She ate dinner with her children and told her daughter that she had to run to the store. This would be the last time her children would ever see her alive. It is believed that Anna left in search for a customer. In Reading, she was last seen around Franklin Street and South 6th Street, Reading, Brooks County at approximately 1 a.m. on October 23, 1988. The following morning, a man walking alone found her body alongside on the Loney Trail Road in a sparsely wooded area near the Route 662 intersection in Perry Township. She had baling twine around her neck, and an autopsy revealed that she had been beaten and strangled to death. She also had several bruises on her face, which the coroner believed was due to a struggle with the killer. The coroner believed that Anna had died just 12 hours prior to her body being found. The police noted that her clothes were not wet, even though it had rained the previous night, suggesting that she was killed somewhere else before being dumped. Police collected DNA evidence from Anna's clothing, but nothing else would be found at the crime scene, which could lead them to the killer. 2 years later, the Reading Eagle, a local newspaper, published a front-page story seeking information about Anna's death. In February 1990, the newspaper received an anonymous letter from a, quote, concerned citizen. The letter contained information which had not been made public and only a killer would have known about. The letter writer had left his DNA when he licked the envelope. So, police were able to collect the DNA from the envelope, seal and test it against the DNA found in his clothing as suspected by police. It was a match, meaning whoever had written the letter was likely the killer. Despite this, police were unable to determine the identity of the killer, as DNA technology was still in its infancy. In 1998, the DNA sample was entered into CODIS, but no matches could be found. With no leads or suspects, the case would eventually become cold. Then in 2002, Pennsylvania State Police sent the DNA sample that they had obtained to Parabod Nanolabs for genetic genealogy testing. They soon identified a local man named Scott Grimm as the potential suspect. However, he could not be brought to justice as it was found that he was already dead. Unlike his victim, he had the blessing of having died from natural causes. Police obtained DNA from Graham posthumously and matched it with DNA found at the crime scene, as well as the DNA found on the envelope. It was a perfect match. Investigators did not reveal how they specifically got the sample of Grimm's DNA. Police have not revealed much information about Grimm's life to the general public. Grimm had lived in Reading, but had moved to Birdsboro shortly before the murder. Grimm remained a resident of Southeast Pennsylvania until his death. He did not have any prior criminal history, except for an arrest in 2002 for harassing a former business partner. However, during that arrest, his DNA was not entered into police database. He was 58 at the time of his death. Anna's daughter, Tamika Reyes, was relieved to find some form of closure. However, she was disappointed to learn that Graham died without facing justice. The case was officially solved after 34 years. Anita Knutson was an 18-year-old girl living with her roommate in Minot, North Dakota. Anita was one of 3 children, adopted by Gordon Sharon Knutson. She was very close to her family and would often keep in touch with her mother. Her sister Anna described her as a wonderful girl, caring and kind. In 2007, Anita moved to Minot, North Dakota from her home in Butte, North Dakota, in order to attend Minot State University. Anita was living off campus with a roommate named Nicole Rice. She was working 2 jobs while also studying to become a teacher. On June 2, 2007, Anita's mother Sharon tried calling Anita, but she did not pick up the phone. It was unlike Anita to not answer her phone calls. She would always talk to her mother. After not hearing from Anita on Saturday, June 2nd, her mother tried contacting her the next day, but was unsuccessful. Worried, she asked her husband to drive to Minot to check up on her. On June 4th, 2007, her father, Gordon, stopped by Anita's apartment. Her car was outside the apartment. He knocked on her door, but no one answered. He tried opening the door, but it was locked. Gordon then asked the manager and the janitor to unlock the door. However, the manager first refused, as they simply could not just allow family into a room without Anita's permission. The janitor then recalled that the window screen to Anita's bedroom was slashed and left outside. Gordon peered in through the window and saw Anita lying on her bed, close enough to touch as he reached for her face. He realized that her body was cold. The manager opened the front door, and Gordon made the horrible discovery. Anita was in her bedroom dead. The mattress and the floor were stained with blood. They immediately notified the police. Anita had been stabbed multiple times, with a robe covering her bloody body. An autopsy revealed that she had been dead for more than a day before her body was found. A pocket knife with dried blood on it was found in the bed. Anita was not sexually assaulted, and there was no sign of robbery. Nothing in the house had been taken or disturbed. There were no scuff marks or shoe prints. No evidence that anyone had entered through or out of the window, although the screen had been slashed and set aside. Police do not believe that the window was used to enter the room. Police interviewed family and friends. They also interviewed Anita's roommate, who told them that she had been at her family's farm, south of Velva, when Anita was murdered. According to police statements from her and her family had been inconsistent. It was found that Rice and Anita did not get along and had multiple fights, which turned into physical confrontations. Anita had been planning to move out. Rice was described by others as hot-tempered and reactionary. One witness had reportedly told police that Rice had been in a club in Russo, North Dakota, the night before Anita's murder. Russo is about 40 miles away from Minette. Rice reportedly stayed until early morning and then left to go to Minette to get clothes. Police, however, did not have enough evidence to charge her, and the case would eventually grow cold. Rice remained a person of interest in the case, however. In 2013, another tragedy struck the Knutson family. Anita and his brother Daniel had taken his own life. One Anita's sister, Anna, reflects, quote, "What haunts me most about the death of my sister is that whoever killed her also took the life of my brother. That very day after she was killed, he was never the same." In 2022, investigators started reinvestigating the case. They re-interviewed family and friends. Soon Rice's ex-boyfriend told police that one night, Rice had gotten, quote, "belligerently drunk in 2008 or 2009, and had said that she had killed Anita." On Wednesday, March 16th, 2022, the police held a press conference. They announced that they had arrested Anita's roommate, Nicole Rice. Police Chief Jean Kane said, quote, "Although most of the detectives who worked on the original scene and investigation have retired, we have not forgotten about this case." He continued, "I wish we could have solved this sooner, but at the same time I'm glad to say that we have the person responsible for the murder of Anita Knutson, and no other details surrounding the case were included in the press conference." On March 16th, Rice was charged with a felony murder, and taken to Ward County Jail. Rice made a video appearance the next day, and her bail was set to $120,000. Later that day, she posted her bail. Rice is scheduled to appear for a pre-trial conference on November 16th. No trial dates have been set as of yet. Nicole Rice has pleaded not guilty to the murder charge and awaits further judgment.